Hey there, so I have some MMO news for you. It's not much news, it's actually kind of shit, but at least it's there, it exists. I have combed through the deserts for MMO news for you and found a little drop of water. It might be pee, but at least it's liquid. I lost it. Let's just get into the news because I've lost it. Because in fact, there's a new MMO about to launch. Well, actually 2 new MMOs. Okay, actually it's 3 MMOs if you count one of them leaving early access after 7 years. First, we have to talk about Ship of Heroes, the new indie superhero MMO that's coming out very soon. When Embers Adrift first launched, I worried that they'd be pricing too high for an indie game without heaps of content, at $40 with a sub. Ship of Heroes, the indie superhero title launching on September 22nd on Steam, is, well, kicking it up a notch just a little bit. The new indie superhero MMORPG will cost you $59 up front, and this includes both the box fee and the first month of a subscription. A subscription that will be required after that at $15 a month with up to 20% discounts for buying more months at a time. On the brighter side of this expensive coin, the game will have no pay to win and no shop at all. It's just your standard old box and sub model. Now, I can't in good conscience say this is a good idea. When you're this unproven, launching at a premium price is difficult. The reason why I say this is you're basically saying we are ready to compete with World of Warcraft. And you're not. You're not ready to compete with World of Warcraft. A $15 a month subscription, when you could pay for that or pay for Final Fantasy XIV, is a lot to ask. It's a whole lot to ask. It's just one of those unfortunate things of the indie MMO space when you price yourself at the same price as these massive companies that can afford to lose some money. It kind of sucks. And I can actually see this backfiring a little bit, which is sad to say. This game is one that I've just kind of been interested in, but not like super into, but that doesn't mean that much because I'm not really into superhero MMOs anyway. But I do know that this is a subgenre that a lot of people love. I think the thing for me is the way that the game kind of looks. It feels very Second Life-y. There's just something kind of uncanny about it. I can get over the animations though, so perhaps it's the premise of being on the giant ship hurtling through space, but also being superheroes that has me kind of scratching my head. It just feels kind of too confined. Still, if you're getting that tight spandex itch and the City of Heroes Rogue server or Champions Online aren't quite what you're looking for, there are worse ways to spend your money than supporting an indie dev. Like perhaps supporting a mobile game, which is another MMO that's launching. The action anime MMORPG Blue Protocol, now known as Blue Protocol Star Resonance, is launching on October 9th globally. Many of you may remember the original Blue Protocol was also slated for a global launch, but was ultimately canned only to be revived with a mobile plus PC adaptation by a new company. The addition of mobile has me losing any shreds of hope I had for the game that was already saddled with microtransactions before when it wasn't mobile. But in a bleak landscape for the next few months or years for new MMOs, these are what we have. Well, unless you're like me and you enjoy instead playing a bunch of indie MMOs that are in early access and incomplete and full of bugs and stuff. Games like, say, Project Gorgon, which is actually looking at finally launching into 1.0, or Monsters and Memories, which just had one of its largest tests ever, is looking at some larger tests in the future, or Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, which just had its most successful update since early access. The Everquestian Everquest style MMO Monsters and Memories just finished their 7-day playtest, one of the longer playtests that they've done so far. And while we don't have any numbers from them yet on that playtest, we do have some very impressive numbers from their other playtest they ran back in July. That was a 5-day playtest, which saw a massive unique accounts of 6,761 with a peak player count of over 4,000 players, which is pretty damn respectable for an indie MMO, especially one that is looking to be kind of an older school classic MMO and a bit more hardcore. I'll be very interested to see what those numbers are in the future, and this game continues to hold on to their players for decent numbers of hours, with the most amount of players during that 5-day playtest playing between 25 to 50 hours over that playtest. And all of these longer playtests are them gearing up to the start of their early access period, which is coming very soon, with projected date still looking at Q1 of 2026. Now, this next part just take with a grain of salt because it was just announced through Twitch, but they're also looking at starting their closed beta for Monsters and Memories on or before September 30th, so before the end of this month. And I just got confirmation that there's an upcoming new test, a longer test even, in November. So October, we may need to, I don't know, play, I guess, New World with their Halloween stuff, or some other games, because November 1st to November 10th is when Monsters and Memories will be doing their much longer playtest. It'll be actually a 10-day playtest, which I think is the longest one they've done so far. All again, gearing up for that early access. So get your snacks ready for that, or your copious amounts of caffeine, unless you're Kratos, because he seems to survive off just pure will and music.
In the night market, the cloth armor vendor.
Okay.
Project Gorgon, the beautifully strange, classically inspired MMORPG that really is just this creative blending of hodgepodges of ideas all in one, which is really refreshing in a genre that's gotten pretty stale, while they're looking at launching into 1.0 after 7 years of early access. Project Gorgon uses a skill-based leveling system that kind of tackles everything. Like, my god, there are skills for dying and autopsies, and any game that has a skill for dying is something that I could probably excel at. There are mantis spies with bowler hats who want to steal all the good carpets, and you can mix and match your combat styles to really just play the game you want to play. It's just kind of this weird, beautiful game that is beloved by the people that play it. And it sounds like a 1.0 launch is around the corner as they finish up the final area, as reported by Massively OP, because they're starting a screenshot contest to help kind of gear up for that launch. Last but not least, for the indie roundup, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen has launched its best received update after an unfortunate delay since they went into early access in December of 2024. The Black Rose Keep zone has been generally well received by players, pulling some out of retirement, though overall the game still remains in an unfinished state. This huge sprawling area mixes indoor and outdoor experiences with lots of new armor graphics, creatures, and experiences. When I went in with a group at launch day, I found it challenging, but not to the point where it felt kind of useless to try, where everything felt too much. It kind of felt a little bit more balanced than a lot of content I've experienced in Pantheon, at least especially when it first launches. Though, admittedly, it kind of felt a little bit like oops, all AoEs when I played. And getting one-tapped by a cleric as a necromancer felt very, very personal. Just saying. In some interesting follow-up news about Everquest and Everquest emulators and things like that, we have a bit of interesting news. But first, let's talk about Warhammer, more specifically Return of Reckoning. Warhammer Online is officially celebrating 17 years with a renowned weekend. And by Warhammer Online, I mean the emulator server that officially lasted longer than the original game, which launched in 2008 and closed in 2013. Return of Reckoning has been around since 2014 in some fashion, accounting for over half of a game's entire existence as a private server is pretty incredible, with Return of Reckoning and the SWG emulator standing out as beacons for game preservation when an MMO has gone defunct. Gets a bit trickier when the MMO is still live though, like say World of Warcraft or EverQuest. Turtle WoW is still getting sued. Nothing new there, it's still getting sued. On EverQuest though, well, EverQuest has just won a preliminary injunction against the Hero's Journey server, which had allegedly been bringing in $100,000 per month. One of the things we learned in this new update from Massively OP, which is linked down below if you want some more information. More of those numbers from August transcripts are that apparently THJ had around 30,000 players as of July, which is an insanely high number and well beyond what I thought, and it concludes with the losses that EverQuest had sustained were about 36% of their monthly users. That actually kind of corroborates past figures from EverQuest that showed their monthly players were peaking around 80 to 90,000, with their highest peaks at around 100,000 players, meaning EverQuest now is sitting significantly lower than that at around 50 to 60,000 players per this lawsuit. At least allegedly. For all the shitstorm the whole situation is, it's very interesting to finally get some solid numbers on EverQuest and on this emulator server. But if you're familiar with EverQuest, you know that a lot of players tend to box or bot in EverQuest, so the amount of actual active live human players is up for debate. But perhaps the biggest story right now is the most idiotic one, and it has to do with Nintendo just being an asshole and the US Patent Office corroborating that assholeness, if that's not words. But you can find out more about how their stupid little patent could potentially harm MMORPGs in the future, as well as all kinds of other titles, because it is just so insanely broad, and it may impact your favorite pet class, like for me, a necromancer. And you can find out more in this deep dive right here. My name is Edward Flynn. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day.